Fawn Crew, Jason, Scott, and everybody else. I wanted to make this quick video of the min cut Yanagi style so that you guys can see what I'm doing with my body. All I brought was my flute with me. This is my new staff at age 60, my second staff in my whole career. I had a bow staff when I was 20 and kept it all the way till now. Now I have my 4-foot flute staff. So anyway, circle of iron. So, min cut. Look at the base I'm creating. It's a T stance where my toes are pointing toward my heels. That gives me a strong base where I can also cam forward with my hips and sink Tai Chi style. Now from there I'm raising my hands, but if you think about it, my body is going low and my hands are raising, but my lower body isn't. Most people, when they raise their hand, their whole body comes up, and that's wrong. You want to keep your body low as your hands rise. Now as they rise, and Jason, you say that you have some trouble with your front shoulders, probably bicipital tendon issues from doing way too much weights or using too much upper body in your daily activities. This is not about using muscle. This is about my arm relaxing. First, my back relaxes. See my back relaxing? Then my shoulders. Back, shoulders. Notice that the sword is straight up and down at this point. Back, shoulders. As the shoulders relax, my elbows start to go right toward my rib cage. Now, Rinchi Clodig used to say, you hit the little man on the top of his helmet. That's what he's talking about right here. That's that point where a lot of things start to change. Because before, I'm using the last two fingers. If I try to do this with my front two fingers, I'm initiating all of that bicipital tendon stuff with a white knuckle grip with my front two fingers, and all of that muscle that I'm initiating with these front two fingers is going to fire all this muscle, and the muscle is going to create drag and also resistance, which equals wobble. So the sword will start wobbling because this muscle and this muscle are trying to compensate for each other and keep the sword straight, and it's like being on the freeway and pulling too far to the right, pulling too far to the left, and your car is wobbling. But the sword wants to naturally fall on its own with gravity. As long as we stay relaxed, our skeletal structure can hang on to the sword and guide it straight down. That's all we're looking for, and that's how you get rid of the wobble. So here I've hit the little man on the head. My elbows have come into my rib cage. Now Scott, you might have mentioned that your arms go backwards a bit. That's not correct on the min cut. Everything has to be forward. Coming forward, you're camming forward as all this is happening. Right here, now the elbows want to unhinge. As the elbows are unhinging, if you notice, my legs have been bent. As they've been bent, now they start to straighten and cam even more. My right leg, my right knee starts to cam. That pushes the sword forward just a little bit. Now if you look at my right hand, see here, if it has a small weapon in it, it's going to flare right here. It's just the way we walk. Okay, our arms flare outward right about here. And on the left side, it's going to flare. So that flare is very important, because if both sides flare at the same time on a two-handed sword, it's going to put on the brakes. This one's flaring in this direction. This one is flaring in that direction. Therefore, your flare stops right here as you're camming forward, And that camming forward is pushing the tip of the sword at neck level, eye level, wherever the length of the sword intends to go on the uke's posture. Now if you notice my hand right here, I often have it right near my belly. Munenori talks about being one fist away. See, here's my fist, here's the measurement. This is a bit of a long sword. I tend to bring it in a bit because of its weight. Its weight wants to pull on my center of gravity. It has its own center of gravity. It has its own mass. When it cuts, it wants to pull against me just a little bit. That's why I have to cam. If I don't cam, I start reaching. My back starts to turn, my butt goes out. All of this becomes upper body, and guess what happens with upper body? All this starts firing up. And that's what makes you really tired if you try and do 1,000 cuts a day, Jason. So, again, here we are. Last two fingers. Relax the scapulas. Relax the shoulders, coming straight down. Right about here, I start to flare out, and I cam. Notice my posture is straight. Now once I've cammed, you might notice something. The Yankyo point on my finger, front fingers, is doing the pushing now. The Yankyo point. So essentially, the sword has gone from these two fingers, pivoted right here, and gone to the front two fingers. Yankyo point. See how my front two fingers have to activate, and there's the pivot point right there. When my elbow comes out, the pivot occurs. Pivot point's right in here. That becomes very important when we're doing empty hand Aiki. Now, one more thing is when we're actually moving with a min cut, you want to move the front leg, and right about here's when you're moving the back leg up, because that back leg can act like an anchor and hold your cam back. But if you come up forward, you can see that the cam actually pushes a few more inches ahead, sometimes 6-8 inches ahead. Well, I said everything is like a sword or a spear. Everything is like a broom or a shovel. Here's my broom. Obviously I'm brooming a ceiling, okay, right here. And now here's my shovel. All right, if you look at shovels, that back foot has to work, because if you're doing this, it's all upper body. But if you're letting the lower body do it, watch how my hip initiates the push of the sword, or of the shovel. So in the cut, right here, notice my posture's erect. Keep pushing forward with that belly, the pelvic girdle. That's the cam. That's going to give you a lot of power. So again, all technique has to have the sword and the spear. Sword, spear. Sword, spear. When you put somebody in any one of the traditional Aiki joint locks, and you start to take their balance and drop weight through them through the dropping of the sword, the only thing that keeps them toppling over is the cam that you keep pressing with. I'll even step forward if I don't have enough distance to keep the pressure on. I got to keep connection to that technique. Now finally, we're going to talk about Daito hands. Daito hands are a series of screws. You might see that when I do a Koda Gaesh on somebody, I'm doing one type of screw. And on a Ikkyo, I'm doing another type of screw. This is a point in space. Boom, look at that. Boom. I get all this camming motion in my hands. That's the most simple forms of cams that our hands do. that cam is naturally in your sword cut, right here, when your arm flares out. That puts all kinds of torque into the end of a technique. The most important part of that is that if you look at Okamoto, he seems to do about 80% of his technique just with his Daito hands. But in Yanagi, we do 80%, 90% of the technique with our lower body, and the Daito hand adds the flavor or final torques once the big fat man is at the edge of the diving board on one toe, ready to go. Torque is great. But it's very hard sometimes to torque somebody right out of a good stable stance just with your arm or your hands. So again, I fear that if we don't make that distinction, people start trying to rely too much on these final flares and make that 80 or 90% of their technique, and they're stuck still in the upper body. This is a lower body art. All good art is a lower body art. It goes from the bottom of the feet, goes through the knee, directs by the waist, and culminates in the hand. And that's all we're going to share for now. Next videotape, we'll apply those concepts to a two-person high-key techniques. We'll take 4 or 5 of them, and please give me some ideas on which ones you want to look at, and we'll add those exact same concepts on. Again, going back to the very first step, whenever we step, I share Tai Chi step. Single weight, blind man's cane, no weight on it. Pull with the front knee, that helps the pelvic girdle to sink. Come forward, that is the cam, and the back foot what? Recedes right back into the other foot. Fighting a man is just like taking a walk. That's all it really is. Turn corners with it, bakwa style. Round corners with it, Tenkan, Irimi style. It's all the same thing. Look at my toes when I do that. I set up my toe and just sit on my other foot. So again, if I'm cutting, and I want to cut here, and I want to cut here, look at my footwork. And it's all Tai Chi stepping. Thank you.